Flow in the house. Today's topic is about the importance of spirituality and materialism, or in life. There's a saying that goes, 1 foot in matter and 1 foot in spirit, which cannot be further from the truth because it's 1.5 foot in spirit and only half foot in matter. Samurai saying goes 70 Zen, 30 Ken, or 7 Zen, 3 Ken. So, which means that spirit or spiritual growth is 70% responsible for preventing and only preventing problems and solving them, and only 30% is with technique or sword or tongue, whatever, and do the ego self. See, the thing is, the ego self or the mind or life cannot exist without imbalance of the elements. It's that imbalance that creates feminine or masculine, male, female, and reproduction and whatever. So without that imbalance, there's no life. There's nothing. It's life or mind relies on the split between good and bad, up and down, black and white, good and evil, pain, pleasure, blah blah blah, hot and cold, male and female, masculine, feminine, blah 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 blah. It goes on. There's many ways to experience or express the same that split of the mind. So let's put this in perspective using, say, smartphone, for example. A very feminine person, a water element character, would be very chill about that phone and not maintain it. They would care about more about its appearance and not really do any maintenance, anti-virus, software, hardware, nothing. They wouldn't clean it. And when it breaks down, just get another. For example, I have a cousin who's got 3 or 4 phones, and I don't know why. Probably, I asked him once. He said, "Oh, because one of them screen is broken, but the other, use it for something else. The other for work, the other for yada yada." And when one breaks, you just get another and uses 2 or 3 or 4, which is messed up. There's too many phones, too much. It's going to cause too much. Distraction and thinking and it's going to create problems if you have a lot of stuff, whether to prevent the problems or to deal with them, or when you no longer have money to afford all these things, that all the money you have to spend to handle problems. Now, though they handle the masculine side, would have a phone, not very expensive, and they would make sure it's a long-lasting phone, not so much because it looks great. And they would maintain regularly hardware, software, whatever that works. They would make sure it doesn't break down, and if it does break down, despite of how good they take care of it, they smash to the ground, break it. But it takes so much time of the hands to maintain them that it may take even longer than doing the work that's intended to be done with them, which is crazy. Have only that phone, and then they'd be too cautious or too controlling with it. They know exactly where it is. They even have tracking software in case they lose it or get stolen. It's pretty crazy, but you can be extreme. See, the fire and water element is very important in understanding your character, because those are about the reaction to life, and spirituality is mostly about how to react, because there's, like I believe I mentioned, there's 2 challenges in life: temptations and problems. Life's really about how you handle those. So if you're not able to handle temptation, they would have a problem, and then how do you handle a problem? So the ego self basically is very bad at preventing problem. It because of that imbalance, it has temptations and it goes with them, therefore it has problems. So first of all, it creates problems. Second, it's not able to solve them, and third, it creates even more problems out of those problems because it's not able to solve them properly. So it reacts like because of that emotion and the reaction, be it the imbalance of the fire element, maybe it breaks it, or let's use the word because it shuns it. When you have a problem or something not going your way, usually without that balance, there's shunning. So in the fire element, there's rejection, okay, or antipathy, or where there's too much water element, there's avoidance or over empathy. So that's the problem with the imbalance of the elements. This applies not only to objects, electronics, for example, but other people, they're objects too, but with a higher consciousness of that subject, of that program. The ability to have higher consciousness of it, of that program, of that subject, okay? But it also has a subject, just like any object has, like this phone has a subject, a program. People also have program. But with spiritual practice, I'll be aware of that program, that it's there and it's inbuilt. And they can, as with soul consciousness, they can adjust it, because just like an actor, you can adjust these. But more important than adjusting them is, or being centered, because I mean, you can't be perfectly centered. If you are perfectly centered, you won't exist. You won't have ego. You won't have desire. Therefore, won't have desire. But enlightenment is more so to do with that saying of 30 can 70 Zen. So they both should work together. They're kind of both important. You can't just leave survival and pleasure altogether, or being social together, or knowledge altogether. You just had to put less emphasis on the lower elements like earth and water, do with survival and companionship and pleasure and whatnot. More emphasis on knowledge and critical thinking and empathy. However, when it comes to those, so say that 30 or 40% of matter or ego self, from that, put like 70% emphasis on fire and air, the higher elements, and 30% on the lower, survival and pleasure, enjoyment and cooperation. So yeah, 70% spirit, 30% matter, and then within that 30% matter, you should make sure, try as much as you can to put emphasis on the higher desires. So it's not about losing desire completely, unless you can do that, it's great, but it's about putting more emphasis on higher desires within that ego self existence of importance of 30%. That's why it's really important to use spiritual practice on a daily basis, especially meditation. Meditation or worship is a kind, because they're kind of similar. Meditation is about modeling the objective consciousness, the observer, and prayer or worship is a kind of mirroring. It's kind of like having a role model, trying to mimic being the best version of yourself and being beyond this. Because the better version you are of yourself, the more conscious you are. The consciousness is higher. That's why people have deities that try to match their character to be the best version of the character, because that character is actually a self-realized character, with higher consciousness of itself, and that it has more God in it, has more soul, it has more consciousness, in other words. So until you can be fully just centered consciousness, without any split, without any mind, you should try and be the best version of yourself and be as more centered than you are uncentered. And when it comes to the centered or the ego self, that 30-40%, put more emphasis on the higher elements like fire, air, and ether than earth and water. Tomorrow flow away.